Hi everybody, thanks for joining us today. I'm joined by the lovely Michelle. We will commence shortly. We normally give it to about 3 minutes past, just to give people a chance. We all know that ping that comes up and you think, oh, I'm supposed to be on a Teams call. So we'll go to that shortly. I'll just put this on the screen for us. Oh no, skipped to the last page, ruining my thunder. I'll put that there. That's probably just as easy to just have it like that for now.
I think after surgery, all bets are off. Anything can happen today.
Yeah. It is literally anything could happen today, Michelle. So as I said, we'll give it to about 3 minutes past before we kind of start on that. And there is the Q&A buttons at the top of your Teams. So feel free to click on that and you can add your questions in there, which we'll try and obviously cover off at the end, and or use the chat facility at the top. And then we'll try to ensure that we cover off any questions in there. 3 minutes past. So we'll make a start. I'll just do a bit of an intro before we get into the conversation. Apologies today if I was just saying to Michelle, I had surgery last week and it kind of has taken me a bit longer than I expected to get over. So I am here in body and spirit, but if I do start to wobble on a little bit, it might be some of the drugs that I'm on. So feel free to like wave. Use that tool to wave at me. Katie, you're off on a tangent. But we'll see how it goes. I've briefed Michelle. We've got a code word. So today we're going to be talking about marketing and transforming perceptions and staying positive in recruitment. I was just saying to Michelle that I think that especially for marketeers in the recruitment sector, it's especially hard because it is quite a high pressured sales environment. You know, there isn't a huge amount of time. Like I see it quite often that grads will come out and they'll go into like a recruitment marketing role and expecting to do all of these lovely things that they've learned at uni, where it's all about building brand perception and you've got all the time in the world to kind of do all of these niceties, and then you get thrown into a world of where it is quite reactive, i.e., you know, the market's shifted, we need to get on this, we need to bring in more candidates, we need to get that. And it definitely feels like it's more of sales enablement than it is kind of what we would see as traditional marketing. I know Michelle has worked with lots of my clients and people from the networks that I'm part of, so I was really keen to get her in to talk about like positivity and how to remain in that kind of positive mind frame, how to also Michelle, which I will give you a chance to introduce yourself, won't steal all your thunder, but
she was easier.
She was also a recruiter herself for many years, so has like a really good insight. So those who don't know me, I'm Katie. I'm a fractional marketing director specialising in the recruitment field for over 10 years, but in marketing, I should probably update this because it's way more than 20 years. I'm trying to hold on to my youth, I think. But now I specialise in working with just recruiters, and we do everything from kind of board level strategy through to mentoring and helping kind of in-house or external teams develop their marketing and or like a done for you service too. And so we'll cut. Oh, you're not the email pro, Michelle. Sorry, I haven't updated that slide. That's number one of my faux pas today, I'm sure. So Michelle, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. Thank you, particularly Katie, when you're recovering post-surgery. Very, there's the braveness of the recruitment industry, isn't it? It's like nothing gets us down. Although, let's be honest, it does. So yeah, talking about sort of trying to hold on to our youth, I started in recruitment in 97. And now often when I'm doing sort of workshops and I'm like, put your hand up if you weren't born yet in 97.
Oh,
and
no.
It's like, God, I'm really old. So I was at Computer Futures all throughout my 20s, which I absolutely loved. Great fun, sort of high achiever, working the perm market. I then left there and joined a Microsoft Gold partner to run their recruitment, helped them scale until they sold. Then I set up my own recruitment business working with technology startups, until I hit a bump in the road, shall we say, health-wise, which I ignored for 3 years, because you just kind of get used to feeling a bit rubbish and you can find lots of excuses, until eventually I couldn't make any more excuses. I had to figure out what was going on, sort of healed myself, which sounds a bit woo-woo, but sort of is true. And then had no plans to not do recruitment anymore. I loved it, but ended up studying more and more about well-being, about performance, about mindset, and the connection between everything. And then slowly my recruitment clients started asking me to coach them. And then I got asked to do a talk at the RDLC Pirate Super Lunch, which when Gary asked me, I said, seriously, these are people I've been to Ibiza with. They're not going to take me seriously talking to them about well-being. And actually, it really worked, because instead of it being the well-being person, she's going to tell us not to have any fun, I was talking as a recruiter. So that kind of then started my very, very rapid pivot to now full-time coaching. About 80% of my clients are either recruitment business leaders or their teams, just because it makes sense. And then the rest is whoever happens to find me through self-marketing on LinkedIn.
Very good. I think it is exactly like you said, like it is something that probably people didn't talk about and did ignore for many, many years, didn't they? And especially sort of even pre-COVID, I think people started to sort of listen a bit more to understanding their own health, mental and kind of well-being physically too, and kind of taking a bit more appreciation. We're not all getting any younger either, so I think that plays a big part of it, doesn't it? You know, that everybody wants to kind of make sure that they're doing the best that they can to kind of live longer and live healthier. And in terms of marketing and kind of the resistance, I know that you've worked with some of the marketing people that I've worked with over the years as well. And what do you think is that kind of resistance to marketing, or that what's the most common kind of things that you hear from a recruitment, or that you've seen even over your years of working in rec as well?
Yeah, well, I'm also actually married to a CMO, so marketing is very much a commonplace conversation in our household. And I think that still within the recruitment world, and seeing it when I'm on site and I see the marketing person desperately kind of going, can you give me some content, or can you go on LinkedIn and can you post something out that I've written for you? You literally just have to press submit. And just seeing that I'm too busy. It's not important. And whether that's because it's not one of their KPIs and it's a very KPI driven business, or whether it's just that there hasn't been that understanding about, fundamentally, if we look at Apple as a brand, people don't buy Apple because they've got the best kit. They buy Apple because the brand is amazing, the marketing engine behind it. Let's look at the film Barbie. Why was Barbie such a success? Because of the marketing engine behind it. But I think that we're a lot further on than we were in the days when I was sort of back at Computer Futures. Marketing wasn't even considered as an option there. But I think it's still a work in progress to get the recruiters doing anything that is outside of the very core parts of the role.
Yeah, and I see it and hear it. You know, I speak to lots of people that work in marketing, specifically in recruitment, all day, every day. And you know, it certainly is unlike any other market that I've worked in all my career, or industry that I've worked in terms of like fast-paced reactivity, and just kind of marrying the two together. In terms of kind of like mindset and how much do you think, and this is more around like your wellness and mindset coaching thing, I guess, but like how much do you think somebody's mindset impacts the effectiveness of what they do?
Without a doubt, it's where it all starts. Mindset is ultimately the story we tell ourselves. So when we talk about mindset and fixed and growth, it feels like quite a big sort of thing to change. How do I have a growth mindset? Whereas I like to simplify it and go, well, what story? And obviously being in marketing is all about stories, but what story Just checking. Someone started drilling outside. Let me know if
I
you
can't hear it.
Oh, it's very clever, teams. I was like, I'll shut the window. But it is about that mindset. It starts with the thinking. If we're thinking this isn't going to work, this campaign isn't going to work, this working with this manager isn't going to work, we're going to feel demotivated, we're going to feel uninspired. The chances are it won't work. Whereas if we can work on that mindset and positive thinking, then suddenly we're like, this will work. I don't actually know how it's going to work, but I know that it will. And then we start to feel more confident and positive in what's happening. And then the chances are we'll have a much more positive outcome. So I think everything starts with mindset, and particularly when you're working in marketing and recruitment and there are those barriers that you're having to face. If you let that mindset go, if you start telling yourself that it's not going to work, they're not going to believe you, no one's going to read your LinkedIn posts, then lo and behold, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it is funny, isn't it? Like you saying about that. Well, not funny, but sorry. But I think that, when you wake up in the morning, it sometimes would be really easy, wouldn't it, to kind of be like, oh, I didn't go in yesterday. And like one of the things that I read was about starting like a fresh new day each day. So, even if you've had that bad day the day before, kind of thinking actually having that one kind of mindset that you're looking to get to and building on that to try and remain positive that day. And you hear it all the time, like, oh, I really enjoy that person because they're really positive. Like, I think that that's such a powerful thing. And it's definitely something that I try to do in my day to day, is just to try and remain as positive as you can, no matter what. And then it kind of gives you that momentum to keep going. In terms
So
of,
kind of choosing your mood, aren't you, as going, who do you want to be today? And sometimes it's the sort of the alter ego. It's like Beyonce's got her alter ego called Sasha Fierce, and I'm sure there are times Beyonce's going onto the stage and going, oh, not today, but she's got
not
15.
Beyonce, she doesn't do
Beyonce.
that.
Exactly. But she's like, right, have a little chat with yourself. Sometimes you
Yeah.
have got to put that mask on, because actually you put the mask on, your thoughts start to turn into more positive ones. And then suddenly, before you know it, you're feeling better. So sometimes we have got to fake it until we get to the point of feeling more positive, and then you have a better day.
Yeah. And I know this wasn't on the questions, but it's just because we're sort of going down that route. What tips can you think of, to put you on the spot, to kind of help somebody change their own mindset if they are at a point where they're starting to feel negative? Are there any tips that you can give somebody to kind of help bring them back around?
So when you notice it's happening, there are various different things you can do. One of them is about breathing. I talk loads on LinkedIn about breathing, and sort of until people try it, they don't realize the benefit. But when they realize, they really realize. So it could be just a few deep breaths in and out. Okay.
Are we all doing that now with Michelle?
There we go, in and out. And you're like, okay, here we go. It could be putting a pause in. And sometimes I say to people, put a physical pause, step back, and like literally, here we are, you're at your desk, or you've just gone to have a chat with someone in the team and that hasn't gone as you had hoped. Pause, take a step back, take a couple of deep breaths, and then go again. Or if we're looking at sort of the deeper ways of doing it, it's around cognitive behavioral therapy. And one of the key tools within that is called thought policing. And it's about ultimately taking your thoughts to court. So when you're sort of there and someone's turned around and gone, well, I'm not going to help you because this marketing campaign isn't going to work, you start to think, I'm not good enough. I can't do my job. I'm clearly not experienced enough, whatever the thought might be. And then you check in and you go, hang on, is that thought a fact? What is the evidence that says that that is an actual fact? It's often very, very little. There might be a couple of facts, like we're not perfect. But then you go, what is the evidence that suggests that that's not true? Well, previously my campaigns have been really good and everybody else in the team really respects the work that I do. And I have had loads of views and I've increased the number of followers, etc., etc. For you to then realize and go, now, let me look at this with all of the evidence. What's the truth? Okay. You are really good at your job. There might just be somebody in the business that you've got to work on building that relationship with.
Yeah. And I think they're really good tools. I saw actually online the other week, I think because obviously I've been talking about this and writing the stuff for it and everything else. And there was this, I think it was like the Joy Club or something on my Instagram came up, and it was like a little pad that you could get, which like did that sort of mind map for you. So it was like, write your thought here, and then it was like, provide the evidence of why, and then provide the evidence of against. And I thought that was a really nice way, especially with teenagers in my house. I think it can like not just for me when they're being mean to me, but just maybe it's something to help them, because I think it's hard to know how to manage your feel like those kind of feelings especially if you're new to industry or new to working. It can be quite a challenge. And putting the flip onto, or the boot onto the other foot, how are there ways or ideas of things that you've seen work or that to help shift someone else's perceptions? So if it's that role reversal that your line manager or whoever you're kind of trying to deliver these campaigns etc to has that negative mindset, is there things that you can do to help them?
Yeah, so the first thing might just be about how you communicate. So there's a technique that I use called non-violent communication, and this isn't about don't punch them in the face. We obviously we don't want to do that. But the idea is that we often go into those conversations very emotional, or we have waited so long to say them that what comes out of our mouth isn't actually really a helpful way of saying it. So the idea with NVC is you firstly start with a fact. So let's say you're saying to your boss, hello, boss, last week you sent me an email that said this. That's a fact. No one can disagree. And at that point, we often might say, I feel like you don't care. I feel like you think I'm not good enough. And all of that is judgment, and straight away gets the other person's back up, because you're telling me you know what I feel. So we have to say what you feel. So I feel embarrassed, I feel worried, I feel anxious. So they can't argue with how you feel. I feel concerned. And then you say why. And I always like to start this with a bit of a positive. I feel worried because I love working here. I love you as my boss, all of this big positive, make them feel good. But I feel worried because I really love working here. And from your email last week, I'm concerned that I'm not doing what I need to. And then you finish with a suggestion. So what I'd ask is, maybe can I get some more training on this particular tool that we're using? Or maybe we could sit down every week on a Monday lunchtime. I'll buy you lunch, and we can go through what's working, what's not working so well. Or actually, maybe the suggestion is that for the next 2 weeks, you just trust me and you let me do things the way I want to do them. And if after 2 weeks they don't work, no problem. I appreciate you giving me the space. But if they do work, then maybe we could look at adapting things. So firstly, it is about how you message it, because often in recruitment, we've got very short amount of time to be getting across the message. And it's often, if you're in the office, shouted across the sales floor, or you might not be in the office, but the consultants might be in the office, and you're suddenly got no interaction or sort of body language. Sometimes it is about going out for a coffee or a lunch or a pint and being able to have that conversation in a less formal way. So there are different ways to do it, but then sometimes it's about that understanding what we can control and what we can't control. And ultimately, we can't change anybody else unless they want to change. And then we have the choice about how we deal with that. And that's our own mental resilience to be able to cope if potentially the boss doesn't have the emotional intelligence to deliver the message in the way that is going to be best received.
Yeah, I've always found as well, like sometimes it's asking people what they think is success, because quite often you'll find like a gap between what they perceive as success and what you're trying to deliver to as a marketeer. So it's trying to also align them. So, in that conversation, and 100%, it like sometimes can be the most awkward conversation, can't it? So taking it off. And how do you get around things like, because I think, like you mentioned there, a lot of people work remotely now. So whereas you used to be able to, and you can read a lot from someone's body language and having that face to face and sitting down with someone, what do you think can help from like if you're on a Teams call? Is there any kind of things that you can sort of do to kind of make sure that you're remaining positive?
So one of the things, and I don't know how you'll all feel about this, when I'm coaching, I don't do it on video. It's either in person or it's on the phone. Because let's be honest, most of the time we're on a video call and we're just looking at the email notifications that pop up. We're looking at what our hair looks like. We're looking at the state of the background, as opposed to actually being in the conversation. So can you have that conversation on the phone? Yes, if you need to share spreadsheets or you need to share PowerPoint, absolutely, tech is brilliant. But I find that I get a lot more out of the conversations, and I can hear from someone saying hello. I'm like, what's the matter? And they're like, how do you know? I've only just said hello. And I'm like, I can hear it.
Yeah.
And actually, those things that we've kind of all like mastered how to behave on sort of video conference now. So some of it might be about taking it off the screen. Or some of it is about choosing the time when you put those meetings in, because if you're putting the meeting in at that point when they've maybe just come out of the weekly update with the team, or the Monday morning meeting with the team, or they've just had a really difficult pitch to a client that didn't go well, or they've just had a dropout on a big deal, it's probably not the best time to be having those conversations.
Yeah.
And of course, we don't always know when a dropout's going to happen, obviously, but I'm sure there are some set times that or they could tell you when is the best time for them to be able to give you their full attention, because unless you've got their full attention, you're not going to get the best out of that call and what you really want to achieve from it. But I think your point about what success looks like is spot on. Like, how many people are looking at other brands out there, and I won't name any, but we know a few that are kind of always there on LinkedIn, and you're like, oh my God, why am I not that brand? Why don't I have that many followers? Why aren't those my brand colors? Whatever it might be. And then the question is, well, what does success look like to you? Or to the business you're working with? Do they want to be a global brand? Do they want to be a brand that's really known for flexibility and being a family caring brand? What is it? And then actually set the goals for what success looks like to you, as opposed to like, we all want to look like the famous person on Instagram, but how many pictures have they taken for them to look that good? So let's stop comparing ourselves to others, be inspired and motivated by them, and look at their ideas and go, oh, that was great. I really like that. That really worked. But if they're making you feel rubbish, this is a big thing I've done actually, mute them. If you're looking at another brand and it just makes you feel a bit crap about yourself, I do this with certain there's a couple of other coaches.
We're all going to be checking if we're muted now, Michelle.
I don't actually, can you check that?
No,
I don't know how it works, because you're still following each other, but you're just not seeing their content. In their feed. Because I just found that it was making me feel rubbish. The unhelpful thinking starts going on. I'm having to constantly CBT myself to go, you are good enough. Desperately reading my LinkedIn recommendations to remind myself, okay, I'm different to everyone else. You're different to other people. This is about your authenticity, and you bringing your personality to the marketing.
Yeah, I think what you said about ROI is really interesting. And that's something that people that we work with, it's definitely on a case-by-case basis. But I get asked that question all the time about, like, is there a standard ROI that we should be measuring for marketing? And I'm like, well, no, because everybody's goals are different. So it definitely needs to be, and it is that thing of like what success looks like for that person or for that business and what they're trying to achieve. We had Jamie Burrows on, the podcast guy, and he was talking about that he did a podcast, and it was like to these miners of like this really rare thing, and like the market on it was so niche, and they had like 60 people or something subscribed to this podcast, but that was a huge success because there's only like 200 people in the world that could do this thing. So you can't always measure on the same things, and so anybody that tries to sort of tell you differently. And I think as well, it's really important to be mindful of like the processes and systems that are set up within those other businesses. They might have 20,000 followers, and they might get all the engagement on one LinkedIn post, but actually what's the follow-up process behind that? They might have a team of people that have rung every single person that's liked that post, which is how they've converted it to a sale. So it's good to be mindful of that. And I think we are fortunate in some of the networks that we're in, that a lot of the recruiters have like open conversations, so you can ask that question as well. Even I've rung and spoke to other marketing people and just sort of said, oh, I've noticed this, like, how have you kind of grown to this point? We don't all know everything, and so it's don't be afraid to kind of ask that question as well. Especially as marketeers, we're quite willing to kind of share and cheer on other recruitment marketeers as well, because I think we all understand the kind of pressures and strains that everybody's under, and nobody's got a winning formula to any of this.
No,
because if we
the algorithm changes constantly, doesn't it? And you just think you've nailed it, and then you're like, why did that one not work?
Yeah, exactly. And even with some of these systems like Force 24, where you can track like pretty much any interaction, they will still be limited in based on like IPs. So unless every individual person has their own IP, it could just be that it's telling you someone from that business has been visited, and then you've then got to try and work out like from activities, and it will tell you like who's the most likely. So nothing is 100% effective in kind of measuring. So you do have to make sure that you've got all of those systems and processes in place to try and pick up. And one of the things you were just saying then about like that negativity and sort of removing people from your feed and stuff like that, is there any other tips? Because it is something that I think in recruitment you'll see, and like as recruiters as well, you get a lot of no's. So is there ways that you talk about from their perspective of not taking those no's to heart, or any tips that you think would be relevant? Because I think it would help as well marketers get more into the mindset of the recruiter that is sitting on the phone and getting all the no's, which might then kind of make it a bit more understandable as to why they haven't got the time or the kind of will to help you.
Yeah, and it's really hard. The last 18 months have been shocking. And like, having been in recruitment far too long, this is probably the most difficult time I've seen for anyone. And the pressures that are on those recruiters, because suddenly the cash funds are running very dry. Businesses are having to make sort of choices they don't want to make. Recruiters are not making the commissions. The basics are low. So some of them can't physically afford to pay to get to work. So when you're needing their time, but they're literally just going, how can I turn this around now? I need to just make the calls, or the bosses are putting the pressures on them to do the 100 calls. And there's so much, we just need it now. Well, I don't care about next month, next quarter, doesn't matter. I can't pay the staff salaries now. So how are we going to get deals on the board by the end of the week? So there's a lot of pressures. There's a lot of people who have fallen into recruitment who, to be honest, shouldn't be in it. They're not enjoying it. They're finding it far too stressful, and they don't have a big enough reason to want to do it. And often it's like finding that driver for recruiters, but also for you as marketeers working with them. When you understand what motivates the recruiter or the business leader that you're trying to work with, then you're much more likely to get them to get you on board. So it is that understanding them, understanding that maybe that recruiter, if you're in the same office, maybe they haven't had a coffee out because it's £5 for a coffee these days. And maybe you just seeing that they're a bit stressed and saying, should we just go for a walk? I'll buy you a coffee. And to maybe someone in their early 20s being bought an expensive coffee, like, when I take my coachees for one-to-ones and we do sort of coffee, like, it's hilarious because they're like, oh, can I have the matcha latte with some caramel, whatever?
Putting the free biscuits in their bag.
Basically, you pick the most expensive thing, but okay, that means that you're going to talk to me. So it's understanding the pressures that they are under, but also I do the nod and smile. So if someone is being rude, or they're not being very helpful. In my head, I have to go, this is the best that they can be today, given the situation that they are in. And if I was in their situation, I'd be behaving in the same way because I'd have those pressures. And I'm just going to nod and smile. I'm going to buy them a coffee, or I'm going to give them a hug if they're having a really difficult time. And I'm just going to kind of accept that it's not personal. Because it's never personal, is it? It's always just,
Yeah.
we're all so busy on these hamster wheels. And when you are stressed, the part of your brain where you think rationally that says, be polite, be kind, that switches off because it's like, no, I need to pay my bills.
Yeah.
So just, I guess it's that little bit of, we'll use the word compassion for how tough it is for recruiters at the moment, which obviously that then comes on to you because they want to know where's the sort of the ROI. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think if it can get to that point that you, a bit like with a recruiter and their clients, when it becomes you're a business partner, and the same as you're sort of hand in hand with your recruiter or your leader, then you can have those awkward conversations that says sort of, I am trying, but please be a bit more helpful. Please give me some content. Please speak a little bit more
Yeah.
kindly to me, because we've all got the same goal in mind.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I always sort of encourage with the marketers that we work with is just in times of pressure to just be more visible. Just make yourself available more, exactly like you said, whether it's taking someone to coffee or joining the team meetings so you can kind of hear more what's going on and talk about what you've been doing, like how you're, outwardly say, even though I'm sure you do anyway, but it's almost like you need to kind of shout it a little bit louder to be like, I'm here to support you. Like, we're a team. We need to work together. Like, what are you trying to achieve this week? Like, tell me, like, let's think of something we can do to kind of help you get closer to that goal. And I think that becomes, Gary from RDLC always says like about stepping up your marketing in times of tough times. And I think it's the same from a marketeer's perspective, that you've got to encourage that. So you've got to make them feel like you're going to help them and it's going to help them get to that kind of end goal, which I think can be a challenge in some businesses. I think it can be, and you touched on it earlier, but I don't think you called it that, but like that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
If you're a junior marketing person, you might not feel that you can go to the boss and say, I'm here for you. Like, you need to talk about something. That's one of the benefits with age, like one of the only ones, and that you get a seat at the table. But as a junior or somebody that is coming into that business from a marketing perspective, you haven't lived the life of that recruiter, and you haven't lived the life. So sometimes it's harder to get that respect and to kind of get that become seen as a equal or on the same level. Is there anything that you would say to help people kind of help build that a little bit, so help to kind of bring you to that level?
And I think you've really hit the nail on the head there. When I was doing internal recruitment, even though I was an external, I had my own business, but I had 5 clients on exclusive. Moonpig was one of them, had a desk in their office. I had an email address. Most people see recruiters as the enemy. I was
Yeah.
allowed absolute access. They saw me as part of the team. I was invited to all the parties. I didn't sit with HR. I sat with the techies because I needed to hear, well, what's going on and why did they like
Yeah.
that person? And oh, what sort of person's going to fit in? So that when I went to them and I said, here's a CV, they'd go, well, it must be good because Michelle's
Yeah.
given it to me. Or please, can you do an interview at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? Well, I will, because Michelle would have asked if there was any other options. And if that's the only option, I will do it.
Yeah.
So I was around, I was very visible. I was in the offices, even though I wasn't permanent member of their team. For me, this was before COVID. I liked it. I'd go around. I was in London. I had my little foldy wheelie bike, and I'd turn up on the client site. I'd be making cups of tea. I'd be like, who can I chat to? Oh, someone's at the water. I'll go and have a chat. Because then it felt like we were partners. And when I asked for something, they would happily help. And the same as when they were asking me, I would then help them. So I was helping them run user group events. I was helping them run hackathons. Like, these were not necessarily things that were directly related to my job. They were more marketing
Yeah.
and sort of brand building, but I was just that trusted person that I would go above and beyond. And when you are newer to it and you don't feel that you can necessarily push back as much, be really helpful. I was at a company yesterday, a recruitment business, and we were getting all the laptops set up, and there was a problem with the clicker. And the IT support guy, young lad, really sweet, was literally like, right, leave it with me. I've got this. And off he was, and he was finding new batteries. And I was just like, you're brilliant. So don't assume that because you're younger, people don't care. You might have to try a bit harder because you can't say, well, I've got 10 years in marketing, don't you know? But it doesn't matter. These days, actually, the younger people are often able to bring the newer ideas that maybe the older people like myself are like, oh, hadn't thought about that. Is that what the young people do these days when they're job hunting? So I think having that confidence to be sort of helpful, and if you can't speak up, then everyone is quite happy for a glass of water or a cup of tea on a busy day. And even if you just leave it on their desk and walk away, that little memory goes in there that you're a good person, and that when you need something from them, like a piece of content, they're going to be more inclined to say, yes, let's do this.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. Like I could just about think back to like one of my first job, or when I started as a just like a account exec in not in a recruitment, in a marketing agency. And it was that I used to get myself involved in all kinds of projects and just try and get my fingers in as many pies to learn as much as I could and absorb it all. And then I became like part of the furniture and then grew sort of from that. And I think that it definitely makes like real impact, and people do remember that. I still, on my LinkedIn, I've still connected with the people that I worked in that first agency, and they still send referrals to me of like, oh, you should work with Katie. She's, she'll get that done, no problem.
Yeah. Well, I worked
So
with Gary Goldsmith in the early 2000s, and because of him, I hadn't really thought about coaching recruiters because I was so ingrained in the tech world. And it was him that said, well, why don't you do that? Because you understand recruitment. I was like, oh, you're
yeah,
very clever. So I think that all of those things that you're building up now, those relationships you're building up now, they will literally keep feeding your future careers. If you're looking for a new job in the future, you want to set up your own business in the future, what you're doing now, it's a small world. Recruiters talk a lot, which is great when you're doing a really good job. Also a little bit difficult when you're sort of not being so helpful. So it's like thinking about that future.
Yeah, definitely. And just coming on to culture, and I know today I think we've got like a bit of a mix, and I'm sure we'll have a bit of a mix at Watch Back as well. Obviously culture can have a big effect on like people's mindsets within. How much do you think that the leaders of these kind of organizations play on fostering the culture within that business?
Oh, time and time again, it starts there. If the leaders don't buy into marketing, then you're going to have a trouble. When my leaders don't buy into sort of caring about their people, I get trouble because firstly, when it comes to cash being a little bit sort of more rare, then it's like, well, we don't buy into that. We don't believe that that's a thing. But also, they're the people that should be shouting out, saying, right, you are going to put that post out. You are going to write that piece of content. You are going to go and be on a stand at that marketing event. Whereas if they're not saying it, like in my world, if they're sending emails really late, or I'm doing a presentation and they don't come to it, what message is that giving? Is like, oh, well, they don't respect this. They think that this isn't a valid use of their time. And then people are going to learn from that. So it all starts from the top. So if you're someone that is sort of build those relationships with those leaders, really understand what they're trying to achieve, what's the problem they need to solve, because we might assume it's one thing, but actually their problem might be that they've promised their wife they're going to get to an exit and they're going to go and retire in sort of Marbella, and you're just focusing over here on what we think matters, but actually we need to focus over here. So getting those leaders on board is really, really important. And it's hard because if they're the leader that just manages from behind the laptop and they're not really out inspiring people, talking to people, they're not posting themselves. And again, we know the leaders that are out there posting all the time on LinkedIn, and you're like, oh, okay, we want to work for them. And are they writing all those posts themselves? I don't know. But they're out there and they're getting it and they're building the brand and they're making the life easier for their marketing people. So getting them on board, make them a celebrity. There's a bit of ego that they like there. So it's like, get their followers up, get their comments up on whatever socials that you're managing for them, get them on stage at conferences, get them strutting around all like sort of at the Rec Expo or wherever the next conferences are. And then they're going to feel good. And it comes back to the thought creates the feeling. They're feeling good. The action is they're going to be more helpful.
Yeah. I think certainly when I've worked with in recs before, my big thing is obviously get the owner on board, try and get that, but also the divisional leaders. So like anybody who has influence over a team, if you can get them to buy in and understand and see that you're helping, that makes your life so much easier than trying to get the team to do stuff for you, has been key. And in terms of kind of personal development, I'm just conscious of time, so we've probably got about like 5-10 minutes left. And in terms of personal development from, a marketeer's perspective, if you could give sort of 3 bits of advice or 3 things that people should do to help kind of build like a more positive mindset, maybe like work on themselves in terms of personal development, what would be the things that you would recommend to somebody?
Definitely read a lot. And if you don't like to read, Audible. And if you don't like Audible, then podcasts. I just had a quick look before we came on and picked out a book. This is a brilliant book. This is not particularly for marketeers, but it's brilliant because it's got loads of diagrams in it. And I love the simplicity of a diagram. But one of the ones that I just picked out here was the fact that when we're putting all our energy to so many different things, we don't achieve as much. Whereas when you're working with your leaders and it's like, what are the goals? You got 500 goals. We're not going to hit those. You've got 5, right? We can put all our energy into it. So definitely more and more self-knowledge. And from a personal point of view, growth is where we develop personally and professionally. So whether it's Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO or Joe Rogan, if you prefer that style, but definitely that. Definitely breath work. I am a massive advocate. It helps you sleep better. It helps you reduce the stress. It helps you think more clearly. It helps you solve problems. So I would be implementing a regular breathing practice, whatever that might look like. Could be sort of just some mindfulness. It could be some just inhale, exhale. Could be some more sort of breathwork gymnastics. And then
breathwork gymnastics.
Breathwork gymnastics. Oh yes, we do all sorts of crazy stuff with breathwork. Like you want to float off the floor. It's basically like I'm trying to decide whether I can say this on here. I'm going to say it because you're in recruitment and that. It's basically like taking drugs, but without taking any drugs. So if you want to feel really relaxed, we can do that. If you want to feel high energy, we can do that. If you want to have crazy ideas, we can do that. You want to laugh hysterically, we can do that. And if you want to cry in a heap in the corner, we can do that. So it's basically everything. The third
I could do
one,
with that now. Get rid of the actual drugs.
And this is it, cheaper, not illegal, and not bad for your health. You're like,
anybody that's just joined, the drugs are medical for my operation, not just general me taking drugs.
No, exactly. We're talking about not doing that. Do not do those. Yeah, I can imagine the little snippet that everyone gets. Katie says.
Yeah. Brilliant. I'll stop the drugs then.
That'll go viral. You have more views. There you go. There's my third idea. Put something a bit. No, we won't go there. Third idea. I think actually taking that time to pause and reflect on what's gone really well. So like in the last 6 months, what's gone really well? What have you achieved personally, professionally, whatever that might look like? The smallest things, the biggest things. What do you want to achieve for the next 6 months? Okay, H2, right. What are we achieving? And then how are you going to do it? What's the plan? And we might not know all the answers, but it's like if we've at least got those little ideas, okay, well, I want to get my followers to there, or I want to build the candidate database to there, whatever it might be. How are we going to do that? But also at that point, use the knowledge of the recruiters, get them all in a room and kind of go, right, here's what we want to achieve. What do you think? Because they're the ones on the ground having these conversations with the candidates and the clients. So use them to the benefit, because you don't have to do this on your own. And I think marketing, particularly in the world of recruitment, you feel like you're a little boat on your own, and like the big ship's over here with all the recruiters having a sort of beach party, and you're just over here desperately struggling away. And it's like, no, you need to use the knowledge you've got there, because also you make them feel good about themselves because, oh, please teach me everything that you know. They feel good, and then they're gonna in turn want to help you when it's the other way round.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really interesting, that time to reflect thing, because we are all so busy. Like, I think I definitely work to my full capacity. So, I'm constantly on the go. And then this last week and next week as well, because I can't move around so freely. So I've lost some of that traveling time, because I'm very much like an in-person. I like to go in and see people and work with people in person. So, and it's funny that I've actually sort of done that without realizing, but just kind of sat back and I've been looking at the clients that we work with and going, right, okay, this is what we've been doing. Like we follow like the stats and the ROIs of what we do anyway, but just kind of coming up with like, okay, what else could we be doing now? Like, and it is that time away and that time to sort of sit back. I always find that I get it whenever I go to a conference, and sometimes the speaker will be talking about something, but it's just sitting there. And I end up writing like action lists or to-do lists, or pages and pages of like ideas that might not even be relevant to the person that's speaking, but it's just that taking yourself away, isn't it? From the usual environment, from the office, from, if you sit at your kitchen table every day, to just not being there and being in like an environment that helps you kind of creativity. Then I think that can really make a big difference and impact on like where you're going to move to next, and ideas for that.
Yeah, like block it into the diary, put thinking time into the diary. When are you going to strategize? And I watch my husband he's working for a sustainability startup. So there's a lot to be done in sort of the marketing and the brand piece. And he blocks out flow time, because it's constantly stuff coming in on chat and email, and, oh, this award needs to be submitted and that event needs that. And actually, as someone that is creative, he needs that time. And sometimes it's like, right, go and sit in a coffee shop somewhere and work, or go out for a run. You'll get some ideas, because sitting there typing away, you're not always going to find them. So block it out. If you're not giving it to yourself, put it in there and make it as important as a meeting with your most important client or your most important business leader.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. One of the things that I've been taking notes as we've sort of been talking, very old school of me, was just around like mindset for candidates. So is that something that people were doing? Are you working with anybody to kind of help their candidates in any way?
So I've done some sort of client webinars for recruitment businesses that are just looking to have a different conversation. I haven't done any candidate stuff, and I think that's because often people are coming to me when they personally are sort of burnt out, or they've got some struggles. And it is interesting because for many people, they kind of go, oh, I'm better now, off I go. And it's like, well, we can make you even better. We can work on lots of different things. So I haven't, from a recruitment business to a candidate point of view, but I do have lots of private coachees that might come to me because they're looking for a new job. They might come to me because they're stuck in a rut with life, and maybe moving job is something they need to do. And also just because of my network, having been sort of in it for so long, I'll often get messages from people just kind of wanting some ideas on stuff. And that's where I just put a lot of stuff out on social. I make them 1 minute long so that people aren't sort of, there's no excuse. You can find a minute whilst you're on the toilet. And it's those little snippets and reminders. Come on, Katie, we all do it. Next time you will get an email from someone, have a think about where they probably are when they sent it.
Oh, lovely. Mine won't be. Mine will still be stuck on the sofa with my leg up at this rate.
You're not moving anywhere with that cast on. But we do need to think about, I bumped into a woman this morning who lives near me. She's a CMO and she works in the sports world, and she's looking for a new job, and it's really hard for her. And we had a chat as I sort of walked with her to the station, and it's that, come on, you've got this. The market is starting to pick up a little bit. So there's a lot of people out there that we see it on LinkedIn, people popping up going, I'm desperate now. I've been out of work for 2 years, and if I can't get work soon, then I'm not going to be able to afford to keep my home. And I think sometimes there isn't necessarily that empathy because it's a candidate, it's a client, it's a placement, as opposed to, no, this is a person who has got a life, and it's really important that we are kind. Even if we can't help them, let's be kind to people.
I think the reason I was asking is because obviously I digest a lot of like just recruitment relevant talks, not always on marketing, but there is such an emphasis of when I'm hearing things in the market over the last sort of year around like the candidate experience and the importance of that, and kind of distinguishing yourself from the market. So we'll take that conversation offline, but it'd be interesting to kind of have a look at like what we can do.
Just one thing on that, actually. I bumped into a guy at an event the other week, and I got him a job in 2007, and he ran up to me, he hugged me, he nearly cried. And he went, I just have to thank you. He said, you've changed my life. He said that job introduced him to people that now he has a business with. And he just said at every point of the process, you looked after me. And I think that candidate experience, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be just respond to someone. Like putting stuff out there and never hearing back is just heartbreaking. So I think that sometimes we overcomplicate it, and it's just about being decent and sort of treating people like humans. But we could chat more about that.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and having this chat with me. Apologies that I'm not quite my usual. Hopefully, I have come across not too garbled today.
I don't think anyone would even know if it wasn't for the crutches in the background.
Strategically placed. I feel like I want to bring up my little mobility scooter thing and show everyone. But no, I really enjoyed that. And it's definitely something, like I said, it's something that I think more and more people are becoming aware of. The breathwork thing especially. I know like a few of people I've worked with over the last couple of years have done breathwork classes using a third party for either their candidates or clients, and they've been really successful. I also personally know like lots of clients that you work with, and they've talked about the breath work and things. It's definitely something that I'm going to look into, and we'll chat. And definitely for me, the key takeouts are around that taking time out, the breath work, and the reading knowledge bit. I love that anyway. I'm definitely like an Audible. The only time I ever read like a book, I bought myself a Kindle and I'll read on holiday, but that's it. Because the rest of the time I feel like I get too disturbed. Like if the dog jumps on me or the kids come in and ask where their clean washing is. So
I think it's often a podcast is enough. A podcast gives you the information information that you need. So from that point, don't feel bad if you don't get through. Or sometimes I just read the first 10 pages and go, I've learned something, on to the next book. So these are not a load of books that I have actually fully read. It's just for display.
They're all them books, you know, when you open them and they've got like bottles of gin hidden inside.
The truth is out. Damn you.
That would be my bookcase. I don't even hide my alcohol. It's all down that end. I can't even have any at the minute. But thank you so much for coming on and doing this with us today, or with me today. And we'll speak soon. Thank you to everybody that joined. We'll also send we'll send a follow-up link with the recording. And we'll include in that your contact details, Michelle. So if anybody wants to reach out to you personally, and that goes to everybody that's registered, plus everybody that's here today, because quite a lot of people register, and so they get early access to the videos and stuff too. So we'll send that round. Is there anything else that you would like to kind of say, or before we? No.
I think the best advice I'd say is don't wait until it gets really bad, and whatever it is, whether that is kind of what you're struggling with at work, or whether that's kind of things at home, when it's really, really bad, it's hard to then really get out. So it's like when you spot something's not right, start to make the changes quickly and get some help with it, whether that's kind of chatting to a colleague, whether it's chatting to your network, whatever it might be, get some help, because you don't have to do this stuff on your own.
Yeah. I think that's such a valid point. And, you know, luckily mindsets are changing a little bit, aren't they? Because we're of that age where you didn't really ask for help.
Yeah. Have a look at the post that I just put out on LinkedIn today. Pretty much sums that up.
Yeah.
And it's just about the fact that we would rather basically struggle and not ask for help than let people know that we're having a tough time.
Yeah.
So, but you don't have to. There are lots of kind people out there. And that's the joy of networks, isn't it? That it's there to all support each other.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Michelle. And I will speak to you soon. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.